This video is sponsored by Fabletics. Cathay has turned into something incredibly interesting within the context of Warhammer as a whole. Obviously, there's the fact that it's just been expanded upon like it has.
Yes.
Old Cathay was like 5 pages of lore, which admittedly was still about 4.5 more
minis
than
are so
Indra
cool.
Koresh ever got. But even beyond that, it's interesting compared to, of course, the pre-existing factions, but also Warhammer 40k. In what must have been on purpose, it's come to have something pretty equivalent to the Emperor and the Primarchs. The Dragon Emperor rules Cathay, even if the nitty-gritty of it is left to his children, and they get up to all sorts of nonsense while he's gone. That right there is how it forms a phenomenal comparison between fantasy and 40k.
Yes.
Stop me if this sounds familiar, but a godlike being who nonetheless heavily dislikes religion forms a united empire of mankind to hold back the forces of chaos. He has secret plans to ultimately defeat them, and spends most of his time not telling his children what the hell he's actually doing. His children spend as much time fighting with each other as they do outside forces, and frequently have to be told to calm down when daddy can't take their nonsense any longer.
No, it doesn't ring a bell. No.
Now, where have I seen that one before? The difference, of course, being that the Dragon Emperor doesn't seem to view his children with outright contempt. The Dragon siblings are at least given enough responsibility and trust that they haven't ripped Cathay in half yet, and perhaps most crucially, they've all got a mama kicking about who doesn't throw them into hell as infants. That last bit in particular, it's quite important in your formative years to not spend a good chunk of them in the warp.
Yes. Well said, well said. My mom didn't chuck me in the warp, so I turned out okay.
Has to be on purpose, but it's not a one-to-one. The Dragons of Cathay are what happens when you make Primarchs but don't drop the ball at every given conceivable opportunity. So today, let's talk about them. Even though GW pranked all of us and revealed Cathay and Kislev aren't coming soon to the old world, these children of the Dragons have managed to become far more interesting, at least to me, than any melodramatic demigod in space ever could be. But before we begin your regularly scheduled Warhammer programming, you should know that this video is sponsored by Fabletics. Fabletics makes the finest and most comfortable sportswear to ever exist. Any kind of athletic wear you can think of, they've got it. Mesh
up
tees
my
and
alley.
shorts, they've got bangers like the Rec Mesh Hero Tee and the Essential Rec Mesh Shorts, plus a snazzy little fundamental hat to go with it. Black and white not your thing? Well, don't you worry, because you can get them in red too, with the trucker hat and everyday crew socks to boot. But perhaps you're like me and prefer longer clothing. In that case, allow me to introduce you to my personal favorite, the Breakline track jacket and pants, with a white fundamental hat to make.
This is how you should have a master bedroom. Look at that. Bed, mini painting table, bookshelf with all of your other minis, and posters. This is how your room should be set up. This is goals right here. The irony of sports and gym wear in a Warhammer video? No. You can work out and still be a Warhammer fan. That's me. Huge advocate for working out. I have muscles. In progress muscles, but you know.
To boot. But perhaps you're like me and prefer longer clothing. In that case, allow me to introduce you to my personal favorite, the
Sorry, he looks like he's got like a DoorDash uniform. I know DoorDashers don't wear uniforms, but the colors.
Breakline track jacket and pants. With a white fundamental hat to make the outfit
Gotta
pop,
lock in,
I've straight up
lock in.
started wearing this around the house. It's just so damned comfortable. Might be a bit hot right now to wear this outside, but come fall and spring, this would be the perfect outfit to get a morning jog in with. And if you think the clothes are just fashionable and comfortable, buckle up because Fabletics isn't done yet.
This is
With the
up my
VIP
alley.
program, you get a whole load of benefits. Get 2 pairs of shorts for $19 when signing up to be a VIP, save up to 50% on all products every single time you shop.
The outfit looks like DoorDash colors. I'm not saying he is a DoorDasher. Please do not put words in my mouth. I already think he dislikes me at times. Oh gosh.
Shop, and each month $59.95 will give you a credit to redeem a 2-piece outfit or item up to $100. Did you think I was done? I'm absolutely not. You get monthly drops, early access to their styles, VIP-only sales on top of everything else, and free membership to their Fit app. And to put the cherry on top, as long as you do so between the 1st and 5th of the month.
Oh, this is gonna be a whole separate segment. Pancreas No Work, the DoorDasher. He definitely would eat half my order and say they gave it to me like that. No, guys. I'm going to get slandered so hard. It's bad.
you can skip as often as you'd like on your VIP membership. No questions asked, no charges, just like that. Staying active, even just a bit, is important, and there's no better option than
Stop, Pancreas, I
Fabletics
don't
to
wanna
wear
see
while you're
this.
getting in that daily exercise. Go to fabletics.com/pancreas and sign yourself up for the VIP program to get yourself not only those 2 pairs of shorts for $19, but all those fantastic deals on the best athletic wear to ever exist.
Okay.
Now then, let's see what happens when you get an emperor who's remotely competent in what he does. The dragon children, much like the Primarchs, are the more or less demigod children of the Dragon Emperor of Cathay, the divine but not quite ruler of the entire nation. Much like their brethren 40,000 years in the future, they all have their individual talents and were created from the genetic material of the male divine leader of a nation. Unlike the Primarchs, they were not created in test tubes, using scientific and magical methods to create the ultimate generals for Big D's war effort. You see, when a daddy dragon and a mommy shapeshifter who may or may not be a dragon herself love each other very much, they go at it like rabbits until they have 9 children. The dragon siblings were just born naturally, no combining perpetual DNA and stealing warp energy, or whatever the hell theory is actually true, like with the Primarchs. Incidentally, if you caught what I said, you might have noticed they may not be pure-blooded dragons.
Yeah.
Dragon Emperor is a dragon, a spectacular one to be sure, but the Moon Empress might be the last of a race of shapeshifters. Both of them being incredibly powerful magic beings, however, meant that the end result was much the same as the Primarchs. Each of the dragon siblings is incredibly powerful, capable of things no mortal man could hope to match. While the Dragon Emperor can shapeshift himself, it's possible the Moon Empress being a shapeshifter is the main way it's passed down to their kids. If it's not something they just inherited as a result of their parentage, it might have been her teaching them all how to do it. To my knowledge, an exact birth date for any of the dragon siblings has never been revealed, but biologically, every single one of them is immortal. While Daddy Dragon and Mommy Moon predate the Great Catastrophe, no mention of their children was made during this time, so we can assume they came about after chaos started causing trouble for everyone. Meow.
You know, they need to let off some steam.
Ying is the oldest of the dragon siblings left, but we'll talk about each one of them more in depth soon. The dragons of the East are rather aloof even for mighty dragons, especially in how they view their western cousins. They consider the ones in the rest of the world to be lesser for how they let mortals ride them into battle, viewing it as an insult to their status as powerful dragons. Indeed, they also have a low opinion of the elves because of this, viewing a mortal who mounts a dragon to be something obscene. Imric undoubtedly shed many tears when he heard of this, for it means Miao Ying is forever out of his reach. They're also not a fan of the Lizardmen, or at least the Dragon Emperor probably isn't, given how the old ones radically altered the world's climate from what it was when the dragons ruled over it. The Lizardmen also killed a whole lot of dragons with T-Rexes, which has to be something of a diplomatic incident at the very least. Of course, they do still trade with the elves because personal grievances are all well and good, but money is money no matter who's giving it. And depending on how you mean the word, the dragon siblings are just as guilty of being mounted by mortals as their western cousins are. Those dragon-blooded generals you can recruit in a Cathay run are the direct descendants of the dragon children and a mortal they took a liking to. They're far enough removed they can't turn into a dragon, but they're certainly more than just normal people. To further the 40k comparison even further, the Dragon Emperor and Moon Empress rarely if ever interact with their realms directly for long. They lay the foundations of what would become Cathay, and the Emperor apparently built the Great Bastion, but for the most part they're very hands-off. He even has a secret plan to defeat Chaos that we know very little about, although it will come up again shortly. Yeah, it failed, but so did the Emperor, so you can hardly begrudge him the point. For his part, he's at least let one of his children know the basics of it, Yuan Bo, because that's part of his campaign objectives in Total Warhammer 3. Both husband and wife rule Cathay with equal power, so at the very least we know Big D treats the immortal powerful women in his life better than Big E did. Then again, Erda did throw the Primarchs into hell, so perhaps that's not much of a criticism to be making against the guy. I'd probably be pretty upset at that one too. The two of them and their children also aren't a fan of being worshipped as gods, or gods in general for that matter. There's a pretty good argument to be made that they predate all of them, certainly newer gods like Sigmar at least. They view divine entities as meddlers and interlopers in their affairs, and given how they can remember a time before Chaos invaded, it makes sense they don't have a shining view on the divine interfering with the mortal world. For their own part, the people of Cathay don't technically worship them, but let's be honest, it's absolutely worship in all but name. Sure, they don't view him as a god, but it's like if Big E got what he wanted and people didn't view him as a god outright. They still worship the Dragon Emperor and the family and view them as something far above what any mortal person could hope to achieve or become. And if you come in and start saying bad things about the Dragon family, you're going to get beaten in the streets for heresy against their not religion. Now, the Dragon Emperor and Moon Empress still remain rather mysterious, given that they've jointly taken the role of Fantasy Emperor of Mankind. And for just the briefest of moments, I'll stop making fun of the Emperor in space, because the Emperor in China has also got a couple of missing children to account for. Now's as good a time as any to talk about his kids, so we'll start with the ones that are just flat out not present in Cathay. I promise to try to say all their names correctly. Two of them just don't have names and are completely unknown. We know absolutely nothing about any of them in terms of what they did, what they look like, literally nothing. With that being said, there is a possibility that one of them was killed by Archaon. In his quest to become the Ever-Chosen, he battled a dragon named Yen Yalong. This dragon was sworn to Tzeentch, and while it was a massive chaos dragon, it was described as being serpentine in nature, as opposed to how dragons are usually depicted as in Warhammer. Granted, it also had 3 heads and multiple wings, but we can probably assume there was some chaos dickery going on to make that happen. You worship Tzeentch, sometimes you get extra limbs and or heads. It's just what happens. The armor of Morkar Archaon wears made him immune to the dragon's fire, and when it ate him, he ripped his way out from the inside. Now, it should be noted that the only things hinting that this is one of the missing children is the fact that it's described as serpentine and has a Chinese-sounding name, but in the land of Warhammer writing, that's usually enough to go off of. And to my knowledge, the dragon children and their parents are the only actual dragons in Cathay, so I imagine the only possibilities are that this dragon was one of the missing children, or there was a third all-powerful dragon hanging around Cathay for a bit. This also only accounts for one of the unknown siblings. The other one? To the dustbin of history with you, Bozo. For the first of the missing kids we do
They're keeping that in the back pocket.
know about, Shenzhou. She's described as the bringer of light and hope, and was beloved by her siblings. In fact, if there was a purpose for her existence, it was to be Fantasy Vulcan, the one everyone loves and the one who just makes everyone sit down and get along with themselves and the common man. Her main goal indeed was bringing harmony between the dragon siblings and their Cathayan subjects. This went to the point that Miao Ying said if they can find her again, not only will their family know peace, but the entire damned planet would. So either she's all-powerful and just happens to be a nice person, or she's so nice it has an area of effect, where if you're close to her, you become a better person by proximity. Of course, all of this is rather problematic, because the way she went missing was to just wander up into Norska one day. Didn't seem to be on a mission or anything, she just walked up north and vanished. Which is a problem, because Norska is many things, but a vacation destination is not one of them. For Cathay's part, she must have been missing for some time, because there was a period in its history known as the Time of Darkness and Disharmony, where the dragon siblings just went at each other like cornate berserkers. In short, it was Fantasy China's version of the Warring States period. It only ended when Big D came back and told them all to cut the shit, and during that time, not Sun Wukong ended up taking control of Cathay. So finding Shenzhou would be really helpful for the Cathayans. Unfortunately, there's pretty substantial odds that she's dead, because her plotline is that of Cathay's plotline in the Total Warhammer 3 game mode that isn't an Immortal Empire, so you're never gonna play it again. Urson apparently witnessed her fate, but even if you do win as Cathay, there's a noticeable lack of Shenzhou in your empire. So she's either dead, or Urson was only able to tell you where she went for a future adventure and or DLC. Actually, she's missing, and Yin Yalong had 3 heads. Oh god, what if the 2 missing ones in her got dragon centipeded into some Tzeentchian monster? If that's the case, then her ultimate fate is getting murdered by Archaon, much like the setting. The other named missing sibling is Shyama. Unlike Shenzhou, she's confirmed dead. She was the firstborn child of the Emperor and Empress, and was slain before any of the others were born. Nowadays, she spends her time sleeping beneath the very bluntly named Dragon River, apparently guiding the souls of the dead to the underworld with the help of her monks. Given how Cathay has vampire problems of its own due to Neferata shenanigans, she might also have a hand in dealing with them, but that's speculation on my part. Either way, I'm sure Moore appreciates the help in guiding and guarding the dead. Of course, there's a very real chance that in the end times, she was devoured by Nagash alongside Moore once he became Death Incarnate, so perhaps she should have chosen a different profession. For the dragons that are still around and kicking, we'll go in order of Total War relevancy. Miao Ying is therefore first. With Shyama busy being dead, she's the oldest child remaining, and is apparently Daddy's favorite. If you'll excuse my Sigmund Freuding for a bit, I can't help but wonder if that's because Big D wanted a replacement for Shyama and Miao Ying was born a girl. Going forward though, I'm gonna stop making rather rude assumptions about their family dynamic. And she is an incredibly powerful warrior, so it's not like she hasn't earned it to some extent. The strongest of the dragon siblings, in fact. In theory, at least. She can rip you in half without needing to bother turning into a dragon. If she does go through the effort of turning into a proper dragon, then it's probably best to make peace with whatever your chosen god is, because you do not have long left on the world. She's also a Lore of Life wizard, so she can keep her army alive longer to assist her in ripping you a new one. Her personality and role is an interesting mix of being above all the drama of her station, while also perhaps being the most insufferable person you could imagine talking to. On the one hand, she's the
Sounds
one
like
in
an
charge
elf.
of the Great Bastion's defense in the northern provinces in general. She's constantly facing down chaos invasions trying to break in, and commands millions while she does so. Immortal dragon or not, I imagine that would take a toll on anyone. She goes through never-ending war against eldritch abominations, while countless millions of her subjects die despite her best efforts, with the knowledge that if she falters once, Cathay is going to be going through some real hard times. Not the sort of thing I would imagine making someone a joyful person. It's to the point that I'm pretty sure she's the single dragon sibling that's never had any mortal children.
It makes me think of Gilliman. Just managing everything and everything weighs on you all the time.
Tolerates no dissent and disharmony from the mortals under her, and while this might make her come across as the fun police, you can't have that kind of thing going on when chaos is at the gates. Cold and aloof is a very common way to describe Miao Ying, and she's overall probably the last dragon sibling you'd want to be stuck in a long elevator ride with. Again, this is hardly a criticism so far. You spend every waking moment fighting the forces of chaos and have anything but a 1,000-yard stare, and then you can judge her for it. She's
Yes.
also her father's favorite as mentioned before, and is sent on more important missions because of both that and her power. This has resulted in the rest of the dragon siblings being rather jealous of the clear favorite child, which for Miao Ying's part has done very little to calm her tempers or ego. Every now and then you click on her in Total War and she mentions how she's the favorite and the firstborn, all the while with a tone in her voice making it very clear she's aware of how much of a braggart she's being. To be as generous as possible to her, she's the ultimate girl boss who knows her worth. Being less generous, we get it, Miao Ying, you're the favorite child. Can you please be just a little bit less of an asshole about it? She really does seem to be cold and aloof until one of her siblings tells her to get bent, because she was just as much a contender in the time of darkness and disharmony as everyone else was. But again, she's the one in charge of keeping chaos out of Cathay. If the worst thing that comes from that is being a bit arrogant, then go on ahead, Miao Ying. I wouldn't want to be stuck in a car ride with you, but we can all appreciate the work you put in. If I had to speculate her end times fate, it would be either getting killed by some chaos dwarf demon engine or other, or getting Grimgored. Those two factions were the ones most involved with the Great Bastion and Cathay, so given her position, that's her likely fate. Up next is Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon. He's in charge of governing the western provinces of Cathay. Due to both the region he rules and his own inclinations, he's one of the dragons that most commonly interacts with mortals, as the western regions of Cathay are where the Silk Road ends for incoming western merchants and starts for outgoing Cathayan ones. And yes, GW was not trying at all with that one, because the Silk Road's equivalent in Warhammer is just the Silk Road. Zhao Ming is interesting. We'll do the positive stuff first, because I quite like the guy. He's by far the most down-to-earth of the dragons. He's the kind of leader who will crack jokes with his followers, and if you need to find him, the first place you should check is probably the local dive bar. I'm not sure if the dragons of Cathay can get smashed, but Zhao Ming is certainly happy to spend time with his troops trying to find out. Failing that, you can also find him making more dragon-blooded generals for you to recruit in a Cathay run, if you catch my drift. I'm not a subtle person, none of you are here for that. It's canon that Zhao Ming fucks hard. This general willingness to interact with non-dragons extends to non-Cathayans as well. Him and Grease's Goldtooth are apparently good friends, with him having helped negotiate Cathay caravans being allowed to pass through the Mountains of Morn.
I thought that was going somewhere else, and I was like, no way. And then they're friends. They're friends.
Apparently good friends, with him having helped negotiate Cathay caravans being allowed to pass through the Mountains of Morn without being eaten. Funnily enough, they have both bonded over having troubles with their respective fathers. Although in Zhao's case, he admits that he probably couldn't solve his troubles like Greasus did and just eat his dad, if only because no one has a stomach that big. There's also, of course, his barely if at all canon bromance with Balthasar Gelt, existing entirely because in the Immortal Empires trailer, him and Gelt were seen together blowing a Skaven army to bits. As far as I'm concerned, it is canon. Gelt likes artillery, Zhao likes artillery, Gelt's a lore of metal wizard, Zhao's a lore of metal wizard, Zhao is a dragon ruler of a powerful empire, Gelt is supreme, they're absolutely bros. And this attitude of being a real pal has kept morale up in ways the other dragons just don't get. Sure, seeing a 7-foot-tall magical lady give a speech about Cathayan endurance against chaos and then turn into a dragon will make anyone fight harder. But Zhao's drinking and laughing about the one time he and the crew played pin the tail on the Skaven. It's just a whole lot more personal with him. The rest of the dragons may care for Cathay, but Zhao cares for you. The problems with his siblings come in a whole slew of different ways. For one, they just think he's weird for doing that, either eccentric at best or wasting his time and sullying the good name of the dragon family at worst. Spending all his time dicking around with mortals, quite literally oftentimes, comes across to the others as in poor taste at the very least.
Well said.
It's a real lowbrow activity. There's also the fact that part of the region he rules over is known as the Warpstone Desert, and I'm sure you can immediately figure out how that might worry his siblings as well as explain why he's a bit eccentric. Warpstone does not a healthy mind make, and Zhao Ming unfortunately has a side gig of dabbling in alchemy. Naturally, for a man who lives in a desert of the stuff, warpstone is one of the chief ingredients he uses, and it might have started corrupting his mind. He tells us he hears voices in Total War sometimes, and I have a feeling it isn't just his inner conscience. During an interview with CA, someone asked if the gem on his headdress was warpstone or just jade, and the question was pointedly not answered clearly. Aside from that, he lets cabals of alchemists operate within his territory with more or less free reign. This in particular extremely worries his siblings, Yuan Bo in particular, because this is not sanctioned by the Dragon Emperor. He views it as dangerous to the safety of Cathay, but for Zhao's part, he just doesn't care. If his brother or father issue an edict, then he'll follow it if he feels like it, but otherwise he's just gonna blow it off. In spite of all this, he's the Moon Empress's favorite child, making him the mama's boy to Miao Ying's status as daddy's little princess. She'll usually shield him from the ire and wrath of the rest of the family when any get-together turns a bit too hostile, and even gifted him his magical headdress that lets him do magic better. She's probably not the one that put a chunk of warpstone in it, though. That was all him. For all it's worth, though, he's probably fine as far as that term goes in Warhammer. Volkmar the Grim has a warpstone eagle bolted to his chest, and he's completely fine. I'm sure Zhao's insanity will stop at the voices. That's not even a hindrance, really. Luthor Harkon hears voices all the time, and he's the greatest admiral to ever exist. For his ultimate fate in the end times, I would guess one of two things, depending on how generous you're feeling. The first potential death is likely getting overrun by Skaven. As you know, they love warpstone, so Zhao Ming's demise might have come at the hands of them while they were overrunning the area for more of the stuff. Alternatively, and for a far less spectacular death, when chaos was sweeping into the world in the end times and magic became far more prevalent, he might have just exploded. Went to work in the alchemy shop one day, magic was running rampant, and an experiment that would have otherwise been safe caused the warpstone he was working with to go critical. Hardly a glorious death for a dragon child of Cathay, but that's what happens when you mess with warpstone. Sometimes the haters are just right, and you should really stop what you're doing. Given his hobbies and disregard for what his father and siblings tell him, his Primarch equivalent is most likely Magnus. He ignores the warnings of both his father and siblings, and he's rather ostracized for it, and while it hasn't happened yet, it's very likely this'll bite him in the ass sooner or later. The next dragon sibling, and as of time of recording, the last one to be a legendary lord, is Yuan Bo, ruler of the Central Provinces and administrator of the realm. Fitting for his position as an administrator, the Central Provinces he rules are relatively safe. Sure, in Total War there's enemies to fight, and I'm almost certain you can find beastmen there if you look hard enough. But part of that is to give gameplay challenge to Cathay, and the other part of that is because beastmen are absolutely everywhere. You can't really fault anyone in Warhammer for having beastmen in their backyard, so in all honesty, it's probably one of the safest places on the planet in the lore. On paper, and to the knowledge of both Cathay as a whole and even to some extent his siblings, Yuan Bo is just Chinese Rabute Gilliman. He's a phenomenal bureaucrat, and by the nature of who his parents are, he's undoubtedly powerful. But he's pretty unassuming, hardly the kind of guy to be making waves. He's a trustworthy and reliable guy as far as they know, and as a result he's easily the most liked of his siblings. Aside from Shenzhou, but she's gone right now so we can hardly count her. Zhao Ming, as I said, disregards pretty much everything he has to say, but that's less out of personal hatred and more out of a general disregard for authority. Yuan Bo really wishes Zhao would stop blasting Linkin Park and The Offspring and just listen for once, but to my knowledge there's no true enmity between the brothers. All of this is stuff that the other dragon children should really consider re-evaluating, because the other Primarch Yuan Bo takes after is Leman Russ. His other title is nothing less than being the Emperor's Executioner. Him being one of, if not the weakest of the dragon siblings, is something he's more than happy to play up, and is a reputation he oftentimes helps spread. As it turns out, most people are going to underestimate the combat skills of the guy known for paperwork. Helping him out further in this area is that he's also Big D's spy.
And that's super well said, because Leman Russ totally also kind of plays into being the executioner, but he has a lot more depth to him and more intelligence than he lets on.
Master, and was gifted the service of the Onyx Crowman by the Moon Empress to act as his own personal spies, in addition to whatever humans are under his command in this area. In fact, beyond any of the Primarchs, you know who Yuan Bo reminds me the most of? Comstar, from Battletech, if it was a single person. Sure, he's not hoarding technology or anything like that, but he's a nearly all-knowing spy master who has complete control over the administration of the Empire. Because he's a bureaucrat and a spy, he's not only handling your taxes, but going through them to make sure everything is going where it should. There's not a single thing that happens in Cathay that goes on without his knowledge, and he certainly uses his position to move his siblings around like pieces on a chessboard. From the grandest armies being assembled to a discreet meeting between lords to the contents of your mailbox in particular, he knows it all. And if he doesn't know something, it probably isn't worth worrying about. He just doesn't use this information to start full-on wars between his siblings like Comstar and the Great Houses, or own a secret army of advanced battle mechs as much as he'd probably like to if he knew what they were. I guess if he ever gets lore about him goading a bunch of Coronate warriors into a losing fight on a patch of farmland, we can really complete the comparison, but for now, Cathay and Tukayed isn't a thing. He's also proof that entrusting your children with the slightest amount of responsibility and knowledge as to your ultimate plans is something you should really be doing, because Yuanbo, out of all the dragons, seems to be the most involved in his father's schemes. His whole purpose for starting total war in Lustria is to hijack the Lizardman's geomantic web to fuel his father's goals, and there's been no hints that Yuanbo is going to turn to chaos or in any way betray his father. Telling people what you're doing makes them trust you more? Why, that's absurd.
Wow.
You should have kept Yuanbo in the dark and only ever tell him to trust me, bro. Surely that would have worked wonders. Yuanbo, for his own personality, is a rather stoic fella, with some hints at him being the propaganda master of Cathay. He has a short story written by David Geimer called Master of the Meteor Wind, where he deals with the changeling who is pretending to be Miao Ying, and before he sniffs her out, there's a passage where it's shown that he's immune to the taunts of all his siblings. Miao Ying may pretend she's above all the family politics and squabbling, but Yuanbo is actually above it all. The only person who can actually piss him off is the Monkey King, which is very funny because I imagine either the Monkey King is a smarmy little prick or he just flings literal shit at Yuanbo like an actual monkey. I also can't help but imagine Yuanbo is Frieza now, ranting on and on about monkeys whenever he has the slightest reason to. While not as dismissive of mortals as the likes of Miao Ying, he also isn't nearly as fond of them as Zhao Ming is. He sees them as beings that seek to be controlled, for why else would they conjure up and worship things like the Chaos Gods if they truly wanted free will? Admittedly, the Chaos Gods certainly haven't been brought into being by mortals, at least in fantasy, but knowing the complete and total truth of chaos is hardly something you could ask of the guy. If he existed in 40k, he'd be beyond spot on, and either way, he's got a point when it comes to willingly worshipping the bastards. He also does have at least a little bit of sass and ego in him. Towards the end of the short story from earlier, Miao Ying returns and is all blustery about him entering her lands without permission. He responds without he's sure she can forgive him in the same way their dad will surely forgive her for nearly letting her lands go to complete shit in her absence. When she just stays silent to that, he grins and goes, after all, you are the favorite child. You know, I actually like Miao Ying as both a character and a legendary lord, but it is incredibly satisfying when that type of character is so firmly put in place like that. That bit is also the reason I said Miao Ying is, in theory, the strongest dragon child. It may just be because of Yuanbo's position that she doesn't argue with him further, but you don't get to be the personal executioner of an emperor in Warhammer without packing a serious punch. In the end times, Yuanbo could have been done in by any number of things, really. Maybe he was overrun by Skaven, or Chaos Dwarfs, or Orcs, or given his total Warhammer positioning, maybe he was in Lustria doing that geomantic web stuff when the Skaven blew up the moon and he died with the continent. Might not be a heroic 1v1 or a last stand against the odds, but getting taken out by the moon itself certainly speaks to someone's toughness, if nothing else. The second to last of the active dragon siblings is Li Dao, the fire dragon and commander of the southern provinces. There isn't much written about him, but we know he has quite the temper as is suitable for someone called the Fire Dragon. He constantly has to deal with incursions from both Koresh and the Monkey King, although occasionally he allies with the Monkey King, which Sun Wukong Goku finds amusing. He's jealous of Miao Ying because he considers defending the southern borders to be an equally important task with none of the glory, which is either understandable or he needs to shut up and stop complaining that he doesn't have to fight Chaos Warriors. With his constant rantings about the Monkey King, maybe he's the one who's more like Frieza. At the moment, that's kind of the end of things, but here's hoping him and the Monkey King get a DLC to share in the near future. In the end times, he probably died to... who cares? His lore is mostly related to Koresh and Ind. Koresh and Ind's lore is like 50% bothering this guy. They all probably got devoured by the Skaven. And the last dragon sibling is Yin Yin, ruler of the eastern provinces and the Grand Admiral of Cathay's navy. Not only does she not have much lore, but what lore she does have makes her look real stupid. While the rest of the dragon siblings are largely focused inwards, Yin Yin wants to get out there and make everyone know the true might of Cathay. To do this, she would sometimes take Cathay's massive navy and go invade other places, like Illustria. During that invasion, a couple of Slan mage priests looked at the massive armada of Chinese ships that stretched across the horizon, thought that was rather off-putting, and drowned the entire fleet with a massive tidal wave. Only Yin Yin and one other dude managed to survive, and that other guy managed to relay the events that occurred to the Dragon Emperor himself. Old Allure had it where the Dragon Emperor led the invasion, but New Allure made it so that it was just a mistranslation of the titles that made people think it was him. In short, she's incredibly impulsive and so arrogant she wonders if high elf dragon ships are named after her, which pisses her siblings off and shows that she clearly has no self-reflection ability. And every now and again, she gets massive numbers of Cathayans killed in pointless excursions, which pisses her parents off. She's not well liked. In the end times, I like to imagine she was sailing to Ulthuan while the Elf Civil War was wrapping up. She figured she'd show everyone that she truly is the greatest, and that she should be taken more seriously. Then Ulthuan sinks and the tidal waves from that drowned her and her fleet. An appropriately anticlimactic end. Oh god, I think the Primarch equivalent she has is Perturabo. Unlike pretty much everyone else, I don't really hope she gets a DLC Legendary Lord spot. There's no proper naval battles in Total Warhammer 3, and I would much rather Li Dao get a spot instead. And even that's not because I find him super interesting either. I just hope the Monkey King comes along with him. If you've been paying attention, you'll have noticed throughout this video that out of all the dragon siblings, exactly one of them fell to chaos. And that's a maybe fell to chaos, because it's never been confirmed if the dragon Archaon killed was one of the siblings. This is because the Dragon Emperor and Moon Empress realized that, shocker, if you show your children the slightest amount of love, they won't turn to hell instead to get it. Beyond that, including them in both the direct rulership of Cathay and to some extent their secret plans, shows that they actually respect their dragon children and plan to keep them around even if war one day came to an end. For all the Dragon Emperor and Moon Empress have all their secret plans and have a habit of just screwing off to do whatever, they actually show their family love and respect. Yuan Bo and Miao Ying go on missions for their father whenever he needs them. Zhao Ming and his mother are very close, and he even says his father does still love him despite their strained relationship. The only dragon who seems to be completely alienated is Yin Yin, and perhaps if she stopped drowning Cathayans whenever she gets bored, she wouldn't be the black sheep of the family. And given how little lore she has and that she hasn't rebelled yet either, she probably still has shown some level of respect and reverence. What I'm trying to say here is that the Emperor of Mankind is officially out of excuses for treating his sons like garbage and half of them turning against him. You might say the God Emperor didn't have time because he had to conquer the whole galaxy, and to that I'd say the Dragon Emperor didn't have entire sectors worth of planets to help him govern Cathay. When the Emperor dipped out to work on the webway, he could have at least checked in every now and again to say hi and spend some lunchtime with the Primarchs. But he didn't, and among other reasons, this and the complete lack of trust and respect he showed in them caused them to turn against him. Even most of the ones that stayed loyal aren't exactly big fans of the guy. Big D, meanwhile, seems to be loved by all his children, even as some like Zhao Ming tend to ignore his requests when it suits him. Both have their empires, both have their projects and plans for the respective worlds, and to be fair, both of them did ultimately fail. But one of them still had his family, and it sure as hell isn't the asshole bound to the Golden Throne for the rest of time. And that's the dragon family of Cathay, chiefly the siblings. They can be childish, they throw their weight around to get what they want, and they're incredibly prone to infighting. But they haven't rent Cathay in half with a civil war to kill their dad, so at the end of the day, they're better off than the other batch of superpowered toddlers Warhammer is known for. Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members.
There we go.
You are the Yuan Bo to my dragon family, keeping this mess in line while I pursue my own secret project. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching, and take care out there. I think Zhao Ming should be added to Fortnite because I really want to see him hit the gritty. Do you think he'd more do it, or would it be Yuan Bo to seem like one of those with the kids kind of guys? You know.